Hey, this is Sultana Urbina, and tune into the relay for the latest news in boxing all around the world. Thank you for supporting myself and other female boxers. We truly appreciate it.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news. Ow!
Okay, we'll start with this. Sultana Urbina gets her groove back after ending winless streak, targets junior bantam title holder Lara Lescuratt. Sultana was quoted as saying, "I freaked out a little bit because I wasn't sure what was going to happen. I haven't won since 2020, so mentally, for me to go back in there, it took a lot. If I would have lost, I think that would have completely destroyed me." In that moment, Sultana, who sports a professional record of 13 wins, 2 losses, 2 competitive losses with 1 draw, and 2 knockouts, having her arm raised for the first time since her February 2020 bout against Noemi Vosquez, was the cure for what ailed her in recent years. I tried my best not to pressure myself as much as I had in the past. I had pressured myself so much that I didn't enjoy the moment at times, said the 32-year-old Urbina, a promotional free agent who has fought most of her U.S. bouts on Golden Boy Promotions cards. I didn't know how I was going to perform. Yesterday, I went in there not knowing how I was going to feel or if I would win because I had so many doubts, because I hadn't won in so long. The mental rigors of being a pugilist, of being a prize fighter, can be taxing. Though I had faith that Sultana Urbina would secure the W by way of a points decision, I had faith that Sultana Urbina would get back in the winner's bracket this past weekend. Sultana is a good all-around fighter, and she's better than she's given credit for, better than her record suggests. She dropped a decision to her longtime rival, Marlon Esparza, dropped a decision to then-reigning WBA champion from Japan, Naoko Fujioka. I felt like Sultana had done enough in that Fujioka fight that she deserved the benefit of the doubt. She deserved to get the nod, get the decision.
I did.
Strangely, that didn't happen.
The judges didn't.
I really couldn't understand that. It was a close fight, a tight fight, and in a situation where Sultana Urbina was then the house fighter, that was a Golden Boy Promotions show, and at that time Sultana was a Golden Boy Promotions fighter, you would have thought that in a close fight, in a tight fight, she would have got the benefit of the doubt, and she didn't.
Perplexing to say the least. It seems she's not with Golden Boy Promotions anymore.
She is a network and promotional free agent. This past weekend's fight was an elite boxing promotion show, elite boxing card.
And as stated, she won a decision over Vizcaíno in what was an aesthetically pleasing fight, a competitive fight in spots.
Although Sultana Urbina's balance of both offense and defense was noteworthy. Her combination punching mid-range to inside and her defensive prowess, angling that torso away from shots, bobbing and weaving, getting under those sweeping hooks. She really did look the part, looked to be the stronger puncher of the two as well. And it's onward and upward for Sultana Urbina now that she's gotten back to her winning ways, gotten back.
She's back in the winner's bracket, and attention now turns to a potential Lara Lescuratt fight.
Lara Lescuratt, this division's newly crowned WBA champion, unbeaten, sporting a professional record of 7 wins, no losses, no draws, with 3 knockouts from Argentina.
Very recently unseated long-reigning champion from Mexico, Maribel Ramirez.
Lara Lescuratt is one of 2 Argentinian champions at this weight, at super flyweight. Lara holds the WBA title. Maciela Lujan holds the IBF title, the blue belt.
There are 2 Argentinian champions at this weight, 2 champions from Argentina, 4 champions overall.
Maciela Lujan, Lara Lescuratt, Lourdes Juarez of Mexico, and Japan's own Tamao Ozawa. Tamao's got the WBO title. Lourdes has got the WBC.
Tell you what I think, I'll tell you what I think. I like Sultana Urbina's chances against either Lara Lescuratt or Tamao Ozawa.
Sultana herself seems particularly interested in locking in a fight with Lara Lescuratt, who she has seen in the ring once before, at least once before, in the amateurs. Sultana Urbina holds an amateur victory over Lara. Could she hold a professional one if she can get her in the ring? That's the question. Interesting particulars in association with this story is that Sultana Urbina is now a network and promotional free agent. She's not with Golden Boy Promotions anymore. So how can she aspire to get Lara in the ring without major promotional backing? The way I see it, if Sultana Urbina can get either Lara Lescuratt or Tamao Ozawa in the ring, I like her chances against either of those champions. Lara Lescuratt in particular, because Sulem won't be in unfamiliar territory with her. She's faced her before, and Clara is about 2 years older than Sulem, though not as experienced as a professional. Sulem actually has more professional experience against better fighters than Clara has fought so far. Clara did really fight the weakest champion in the super flyweight division for a title. It was a very opportune...
And it's not a knock on Lara Lescuratt. For Clara, it was a step up in class, but she really did fight the most beatable champion at that weight.
In some ways, both Clara and Tamao Ozawa are the two most beatable champions there now. They're both the more green champions, newly crowned, nowhere near as experienced as Lourdes Juarez.
I like Sulem's chances against these fighters, these champions, but there really is a question as to how is she going to get them in the ring without a major promoter backing her?
Because there's no such thing as a free lunch, and somebody's going to have to pay for all of this. I'd like to see Sultana Urbina fight at least one more time before she challenges for an alphabet title.
Or at minimum, fight one more time before this year is out, because there's plenty of time left.
There's plenty of time left to squeeze in another fight, and that could go a long way towards keeping Sultana Urbina sharp.
While her team sorts out her promotional situation and sees about getting one of these champions in the ring.
In men's super lightweight news, a story we touched on in passing in my previous video, Dan Rafael tweeted, Sandor Martin has notified the WBA that he had withdrawn from consideration from a title eliminator versus Ohara Davies. A purse bid was scheduled for Tuesday. With Martin out, Shakram Gayasov was next up, at which point Shakram Gayasov had declined the eliminator as well, saying he can't make the weight. Next up, WBA will order Teofimo Lopez to face Ohara Davies if he wins this weekend.
Teofimo Lopez is set to make his big ring return tomorrow night.
And in all the ways that there were several elements in play that led to the perfect storm, the end of his reign as the lightweight division's unified champion, there are several elements in play here.
The stars aligned to make that disaster happen, and it seems that the stars are now again aligning.
Aligning here again, only this time it's in Teofimo Lopez's favor. Ohara Davies himself caught wind of this news and tagged Teofimo Lopez asking, got any plans for later on this year?
I believe Ohara Davies is with Probellum.
On the face of it, making a Teofimo Lopez versus Ohara Davies fight shouldn't be difficult to do, shouldn't be difficult at all.
Doesn't seem like a hard fight to make. It seems like a fight that's well within Top Rank's abilities to do, and Ohara Davies is receptive to it.
Opportunities knocking on Teofimo Lopez's door, and all he's got to do is get back to his winning ways. Get back in the winner's bracket against Pedro Campas, a domestic-level guy who, for the most part, has been facing other domestic-level guys south of the border, not fighting world-class fighters. He himself is not a world-class fighter. In fact, I think Teofimo Lopez's biggest opponent this weekend isn't Pedro Campas, it's himself.
The internal battle that he may be having with himself and his demons.
And I want Teofimo Lopez to win this weekend's fight. I want him to get back in the winner's bracket and shake things up at 140 pounds the same way he did at 135.
This opportunity by way of the WBA, if Teofimo plays his cards right, could see him becoming a two-division champion.
At least fighting for the opportunity to become one. And all this and more is on the other side of a Pedro Campas fight. Pedro Campas, who has never exhibited the ceiling, the talent level of a Teofimo Lopez, though one must admit he is catching Teofimo at a most opportune time, when he's on the rebound and we don't know what's going on upstairs. We don't know what kind of mental state he's in.
What kind of headspace?
I want Teofimo to win this fight. At this time, Josh Taylor is supposed to be in talks to fight Jack Catterall for a second time. Run it back with that guy, that rematch, and that was a welcome bit of news.
It was when it broke, though this bit of news may not be.
News that the IBF have ordered Josh Taylor to defend his IBF super lightweight world title versus Jeremiah Ponce next, and have set purse bids for later on this month on the 23rd. Taylor will have to vacate the belt and be left with just the WBO if he is to go through with the Jack Catterall rematch next.
Josh Taylor has already vacated both the WBA and the WBC titles.
WBC title is supposed to be contested between Regis Prograrius, former champion Regis Prograrius, and former world title challenger Jose Zapata. That's the WBC. The WBA is supposed to be contested between Alberto Puello and Bortazan Akhmedov. on the undercard of Broner versus Figueroa.
Got a couple of thoughts on that, and we're going to get into those thoughts for now.
There is something very dubious going on at the IBF that has left me scratching my head at what decisions they've been making and what's been motivating them. Better still, the story here is that should Teofimo Lopez win this weekend,
He could be 1 or 2 fights away from becoming an alphabet champion at a second weight.
could very well see himself becoming a 2-division champion in approximately 1 or 2 fights beyond this weekend's fight. All he's got to do is beat Gampas and then beat Ohara Davies, a relatively simple fight to make.
He'll be in position to challenge for the WBA title, assuming that's a route him and his team want to peruse.
As it's not a foregone conclusion that they will so choose to peruse the WBA route. Don't forget where that fight is supposed to take place. The Puello versus Akhmedov fight.
Show the undercard of Broner versus Figueroa. That's a PBC show. That's a PBC card. And that title is set to land on PBC Island.
Neither Puello or Akhmedov might be worth very much right now, but beyond their fight, their upcoming fight, one of them will be crowned WBA champion, and it might be worth more to the PBC to keep that fighter and keep that title on their side of things. It creates a situation to where if Teofimo Lopez decides to take up this opportunity by way of the WBA, fights Ohara Davies, beats Ohara Davies, potentially becomes the mandatory challenger for the WBA title.
If it happens that way, Teofimo Lopez and the people at Top Rank could take the winner of the fight to a purse bid, see about having them cross over to their side of things.
Assuming they can't reach a deal amongst themselves, reach a deal amicably, we are talking about a situation that could, in theory, arise several months from now, and we are a ways out from that because first Teofimo must win this weekend's fight, then he'd have to return to action, beat Ohara Davies in order to secure that mandatory position, that mandatory spot.
Maybe Team Lopez decides to go this route, maybe they don't. Maybe it's not worth their time.
Because in the time that it will take for these stars to align, by way of the WBA, the outcome of Taylor versus Catterall 2 will have been decided. The outcome of Zapata versus Prograrius may have been decided, and it might be easier for Teofimo Lopez to challenge the winners of those fights as opposed to going this route for this title.
To challenge the winner of this fight, the fight between Puello versus Akhmedov.
You think about it, taking on the winner of Zapata versus Prograis, or taking on the winner of Taylor versus Catterall 2, that would be a title fight the same way that this is a title fight, with the difference being that the fight would have more of a profile, the fight between the winners of those fights and Teofimo Lopez.
There's an opportunity there, but it's not quite clear right now how this cookie's going to crumble.
All of this is going to break down. We don't know beyond this fight that Teofimo Lopez and his team will go the WBA route or go in some other direction, in the direction of some other fight with some other fighters, some other champion.
Got to get through this weekend's fight first.
Finally, another angle of the story we just touched on, the story where the IBF have ordered Josh Taylor to defend his IBF Super Lightweight World title versus Jeremias Ponce next and have set purse bids for later on this month. Taylor will have to vacate the belt and be left with just the WBO if he is to go through with the Jack Catterall rematch next. Jeremias Ponce,
An unbeaten up-and-comer that hails from Argentina.
unbeaten up-and-comer from Argentina that's been dividing his time the last few years between his native Argentina and Germany. He's fought over there in Germany several times already, and to my knowledge, doesn't seem to be with any major promotional outfit here in the US of A. He certainly isn't a US-based fighter, as none of his recent fights have been based in the USA. He was in action earlier this year, and earlier this year,
Jeremias Ponce had not yet become the IBF's mandatory challenger. In fact, he was ordered to face Subriel Matias.
Puerto Rico's on Subriel Matias, who fights over there on PBC Island on the PBC side of things. What happened to that fight? What happened to that order? If for some reason Subriel Matias is not available to take on Jeremias Ponce, why didn't the IBF go down their rank standings?
Remember when they went down their rank standings to find someone for Filip Hrgovic to fight after Joseph Parker walked away?
If something happened to Subriel Matias to where he is unable to compete, unable to fight Jeremias Ponce, why didn't the IBF go down their rank standings and find someone for Jeremias Ponce to fight the way they did before? Somebody like Montana Lover, Jose Ramirez.
You'll notice that they didn't go down their rank standings. They decided to order a fight between Jeremiah Ponce and the reigning champion Josh Taylor straight away.
Seems very peculiar to me because that's not what the IBF usually does in a situation like this.
Unbeaten Jeremiah Ponce of Argentina sports professional record of 30 wins, no losses, and no draws with 20 knockouts.
26 years old with his whole career ahead of him.
He seems to be the beneficiary, the benefactor of the IBF's uncharacteristic haste when it comes to this situation.
And I say uncharacteristic haste because this isn't how the IBF normally handles a situation like this. If something happened to Subriel Matias, one would expect the IBF to go down their rank standings until they land on the next highest ranked contender. They don't appear to have done that. They're ordering a fight between Jeremiah Ponce and Josh Taylor straight away.
Jeremiah Ponce's previous bouts don't seem to indicate him being with any major promotional outfit here in the US of A, but could that have changed in the last couple of weeks, in the last couple of months?
Could he have made friends in all the right places that are in pretty tight with the IBF? Because this is peculiar, to say the least. You must understand, the IBF...
When's the last time a mandatory got satisfied at 147 pounds? When's the last time a mandatory got satisfied at 154?
You will notice that in the last 3 years, unlike the IBF champions at those weights, Josh Taylor actually has satisfied a mandatory for the IBF. Apinung Konsong. That was approximately 2.5, close to 3 years ago.
But he has satisfied a mandatory for them.
And it would seem like business as usual for the IBF ordering fights in the fashion that they do, except they're not doing that with their welterweight champion or their junior middleweight champion. And you will notice that their welterweight champion and their junior middleweight champion seem to have something in common. They both fight on the PBC side of things.
How come the IBF isn't applying pressure on those fighters the same way they're applying pressure on Josh Taylor?
He's actually satisfied a mandatory in the last 3 years for the IBF. They haven't.
Why does it feel like they're getting preferential treatment?
Last year when the WBA was in hot water with the Alphabet Commission, who was ordering them to consolidate all their secondary titles at all these different weights, I heard a rumor that several of the WBA's officials had migrated over to the IBF side of things.
Several of the WBA's officials. The WBA that's rumored to have a rather unethical relationship going on with the PBC.
I think about that, and then I think about this, how the IBF is applying pressure on Josh Taylor to satisfy a mandatory for them, which would seem like business as usual if that pressure were being applied evenly across all weight classes, but it's not. They're not putting pressure on Spence to fight Jaron Boots Ennis, and Spence hasn't satisfied a mandatory for them in 4 years. Up there at junior middleweight, Jermell Charlo reigns as that division's undisputed champion.
He hasn't satisfied a mandatory for them in some time either.
And they already have a mandatory challenger waiting. Bakram Murtazaliev became the mandatory challenger to the red belt in 2019. And Jermell Charlo's not set to return until early next year, and he won't be fighting Bakram Murtazaliev. He's supposed to be fighting Tim Tszyu, his mandatory by way of the WBO, the belt that he just won.
How could the WBO be next in the rotation? He was IBF champion before he won the brown belt.
The IBF knows that, but they're not putting a squeeze on Jermell the same way they're putting a squeeze on Josh. They're not putting a squeeze on Spence the same way they're putting a squeeze on Josh Taylor.
So what if Jeremiah Ponce very recently inked a deal and became a PBC fighter?
And what if now that Jeremiah Ponce is a PBC fighter, assuming he is, assuming this theory checks out, what if he is now receiving preferential treatment the same way that those fighters are receiving preferential treatment, just in a different way? They're being given amnesty. He's being given priority.
They're fast-tracking him to a title.
What if all this is a play by way of the PBC and the IBF to get the red belt on their side of things?
It's just an idea I'm bouncing around because something's fishy here. Something stinks.